10. Before sunrise. The time approaches when you will put on fresh raiment, and shake the dust of these halls off your feet, and go down into the marketplace. When you have done that, you will have little time for thinking. Having ceased to be a child, you will cease to think as a child. You will, I take it, put away these childish things. Your mind will be on doing. If it should wander, there will be no lack of hooks to drag it back, so that it may not be out of place before you go to stop for a moment, to look over, a little, what this profession is to which you go. What is the lawyer and his relation to the life about him? What is the part he plays in this society? Perhaps, too, you will pause with me over some of the things a lawyer does, some of the opportunities which come to him, some of the responsibilities he carries. And I suppose that the first and the outstanding thing is that the lawyer is not popular. I think he never has been popular. I strongly suspect that there have never been laws or lawyers too heartily approved by the lay population they profess to serve. Certainly radicals have never loved them. The first thing we will do is to hang all the lawyers. And lawyers and records have been cast for burning since there have been such things as revolutions. Nor does such disapproval rest among the Reds. The healthy-spirited men of many ages have lifted up their clubs to bring them down upon the lawyer's skull. Cromwell, his law reforms defeated. The sons of Zeruiah are too much for us. Rabelais, robustious, pungent in his scorn, who being thus met together, after they had thereupon consulted for the space of 46 weeks, finding that they could not fasten their teeth in it. But Pantagruel said unto them, Are the lords between whom this debate and process is yet living? It was answered him, Yes. To what a devil then, said he, serve so many paltry heaps and bundles of papers and copies which you give me? Is it not better to hear their controversy from their own mouths, whilst they are face to face before us, than to read these vile fopperies, which are nothing but trumperies, deceits, diabolical cozenages of Sapola, pernicious slights and subversions of equity? Furthermore, seeing that the laws are excerpted out of the middle of moral and natural philosophy, how should these fools have understood it, that have, by God, studied less in philosophy than my mule? Or do you prefer the terser account in Ecclesiastes? If thou seest the oppression of the poor, and violent perverting of judgment and justice in a province, marvel not at the matter. And finally, in our own day, we have Sandburg, and what he says deserves attention. The lawyers know too much. The lawyers, Bob, know too much. They are chums of the books of old John Marshall. They know it all, what a dead hand wrote, a stiff dead hand, and its knuckles crumbling, the bones of the fingers a thin white ash. The lawyers know a dead man's thoughts too well. In the heels of the higgling lawyers, Bob. Too many slippery ifs and buts and howevers, too much hereinbefore provided whereas, too many doors to go in and out of. When the lawyers are through, what is there left, Bob? Can a mouse nibble at it, and find enough to fasten a tooth in? Why is there always a secret singing when a lawyer cashes in? Why does a hearse horse snicker hauling a lawyer away? The work of a bricklayer goes to the blue. The knack of a mason outlasts a moon. The hands of a plasterer hold a room together. The land of a farmer wishes him back again. Singers of songs and dreamers of plays build a house no wind blows over. The lawyers tell me why a hearse horse snickers hauling a lawyer's bones. No, this profession of the law lacks popular appeal, and I suspect it always will. For in the first place, a lawyer is a specialist, a worker in a craft too intricate for easy understanding. Any such specialist, any such master of a mystery, is suspect to the ignorant. Nay, he is suspect to the other specialists. The more highly skilled and delicate and strange his work, the more we may use him in our time of need, the less we love him. Does your heart warm to the surgeon as he draws on his rubber gloves and asks you whom to notify? But the lawyer's case is far worse than the doctor's. For the doctor's secret craft consists in fighting nature. The doctor, with increase of knowledge and a touch of luck, can gradually strengthen the percentage of his cures. Not so the lawyer. He is a specialist in the conflict of interests between men. 50% of all the cases that are brought to him are lost, and must be lost, so long as law is what it is. So long as law is what it is. Not, it may be forever. For there is nothing sacred, there is nothing immanent, there is not even great utility, in this whole hog or none approach which is so typical of law. In this notion that the purported bona fide purchaser must be left with the whole pie or else lose it all. That he who is contributorily negligent is barred from all recovery. That if the offer for the unilateral contract is revoked before a full performance, the contract must either be all good or be all bad. Surely we have in this white-black division an ancient echo, the ghost voice of pre-medieval centuries, of a procedure too crude to be far trusted. Only one step back of it would be the time when even law and fact were undistinguished, when a man swore merely, or the court decided, on his right. And in our own later, more refined developments, the officials often enough have followed better insight. An equitable lien, created by court or by the Betterment Acts, comes in between flat ouster of the owner and flat forfeiture of improvements made in all good faith. The jury, in the teeth of the instructions, will whittle down the verdict of the plaintiff who has also been at fault. Ratable sharing is the aim of bankruptcy. Return of a going business to the now insolvent is, at least theoretically, the goal of a receivership. There is some trend, then, toward a more intelligent adjustment, toward the discovery of the more workable result, of the result that gives some hope of less bad blood. Much of the urge to settle cases, most of the present drive toward arbitration, all of the creditors' committee handling of insolvencies, run along these lines. But when the case does go to litigation, the point remains. Well nigh up to the hilt, a full half of all such cases must be lost. It is an invidious business, this shuffling, this gambling, this checkerplay with human rights. It is an invidious business to be the mouthpiece of a fighting man who can have victory only as he tramples others down. Small wonder that the trampled do not love the lawyer. But neither do the winners. The lawyer is not only a specialist. He is a specialist in winning what even in his client's eyes calls mostly for adjustment. His clients do not understand what he has done, nor how he does it. Even when they flame to the justice of their causes, their lawyer seems to be putting a high cause over by some piddling trick. They cannot follow the merits through the maze of technicality. For the lawyer deals intricately not merely in human conflict, but in the procedure of the legal action. And the procedure of legal action, like any other etiquette, is blind, is hopeless, is repugnant to its layman. There is much sense in much procedure, along with all the nonsense that goes into it. But you cannot expect a man who has not studied the problem long and deeply to perceive the sense, even if it did not come overlaid with flummery. What turns his stomach, you will note, is not technique. Tricks of his own trade he absorbs with relish. Tricks on the ball field he appreciates and cheers. Tricks that he cannot fathom, these are different. He sees a case in which he has an interest. He sees no reason why technical sleight of hand should stand between him and his victory. And if he is the victor, he respects little the man who won by slipping silken strings before the other fellow's ankles and by pulling silken knots around the other fellow's neck. Here, then, we have 3 reasons why the lawyer is not loved. He practices black art. He is a trickster. Too much hereinbefore provided, whereas too many doors to go in and out of, and half of those who go to him are sunk. 3 reasons, they are enough. But there are more. Law is the organ of society's woe when order is not working. But law itself, in its whole drive and purpose, is organized in terms of that same order that, by the same hypothesis, has ceased to work to satisfaction. Law thrusts, law clubs, not merely for the maintenance of order, but for the maintenance of that very order, which may be cracking. Law and lawyers must therefore stand to observation at the very point where society has come to press upon the weak, the helpless, the obscure, the wretched. At that very point they stand eternally and struggle for what is old, for what may be outworn, against the claims of anything that may be new and human and appealing. At that point in aspect must the lawyer stand, stand indeed so conspicuous that sometimes he and his work are all that is perceived. It is not merely an unbounded faith in law which has called forth the flood of underbaked reformatory legislation. It is at least in equal measure that law, and law that cried out for changing, has pressed on the victims like the Iron Maiden. Woe unto you also, ye lawyers! For ye laid men with burdens grievous to be borne, and ye yourselves touch not the burden with a single finger. The essential attribute of law is to conserve, to jam new conditions into old boxes, whether they will fit or not to change, readjust, or cure. This need not hold of every law or every lawyer. Lawyers have sometimes been the leaders of reform. Law has been the instrument of change, but do not let events obscure their process. Before each such reform, there was a struggle. During the struggle, long continued, there was suffering. The bulk of the law, the ranks of the profession, stood with locked shields against impending change. When the change came, the bitterness was left. When the change came, it was long overdue. When the change came, it still was, like as not, defeated by the technique of more lawyers. All of which gives a sometimes aloes-flavored grimace to the phrasing. Courts of justice. For the same reason, it is clear that the activity of most skillful lawyers will be upon the side of the haves, and not upon the side of the have-nots. Conscience-sturdy activity too, impassioned skill. One cannot live with haves for 20 years without contagion. The best talent of the bar will always muster to keep ends in, and to man the barricade against the outs. And while in theory legal contests may be equal, the better man, the more skillful man, the man with the longest purse who can hire the better, the more skillful man, has his advantage, and will have it in the time to come. Where long-run legal strategy is called for, the marshalling of counsel and of cases through a generation, this advantage will be piled up 20-fold. By this time you have discovered that I do not think the lawyer popular, and that his unpopularity appears to me as natural as whiskers on a cat. The curious thing is the extent to which the counts against him prove on examination to be undeserved, or at worst half-truths, and to disregard in the burst of complaint the merits of the accused. Look the counts over. What you find is this. For part, the profession is charged with being what any profession should hope to be, expert enough to develop a sort of black art of its own. All that makes law grotesque and dubious is that any man thinks he has adequate knowledge by his common sense to judge of rights and wrongs. What lawyers do must therefore be the diabolical coznages of Cipolla. The common man does not arrogate such knowledge to himself in engineering. The art of engineers is thus white magic more than black. For part, the charge is one of trickery. Here we tread on delicate ground. So much of that accusation as concerns the mere and more obvious need of some technical order of business, I think we may wave away. Reason enough as before to see why the ununderstanding are intolerant. No cause for shame. Not so, I fear, some of the other phases. Not so the mazed mass of some procedure, which spells a profession either incompetent in arranging its own business, or wedded to a stubborn ritualism that makes work as 3-inch brushes would make work for painters. Not so as to the charge that law procedure, and the combat aspects of the trial, tend to make lawyers forget their clients' interests in their own, and to forget in both the interests, if such there be, of justice, apart from procedure, and touching the charges that remain. As to the twisting of rules to win, as to there being no gain at law, except at the flat expense of trampling, of putting the boots to a loser. As to the longer purse holding unfair advantages. As to the closed ranks of the law in favor of what is surely 3/4 of the sting of the charges is drawn, and mud clapped on the wound, when one looks to the obvious truth. That in these matters law and lawyers do not show themselves distinctively at all. In these matters, the lawyers mirror, undistorted, the very society that makes the charge. It is clients who wish to win, and to beat down other clients, nor are lawyers to be held responsible for the clash of interests. Not law or lawyers, but society gives fighting advantage to the propertied, puts the screws on in favor of the ins. True, that the law presents a dubious method of adjusting conflict. But true again, that it serves, somehow, to settle those conflicts no other machinery has availed to solve at all. 3/4 of the sting, I say, is drawn, but a part remains. Shall we deny that as we thus meddle trade-wise with the pure pitch of life, some pitch will stick? I have small patience with the man who scorns the man who does his dirty work. I have small patience either with the pitch worker who hides behind the skirts of him he serves. Woe unto you, lawyers, for ye have taken away the key of knowledge. Ye entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in ye hindered. The worst of the charges, then, seem to me in good part undeserved. The worst of them lie ill in the mouths of most of those who make them. For us in our own hearts, they do give cause. They do give heavy cause for searching. Yet not for failing spirit. We have achievements to set off against our flaws. For who is it who does the heavy work of bringing a limping, halting, clanking legal structure down to date? Who is it manages to unfold enough of that rarest of commodities, human ingenuity, social invention, to make old institutions serve new needs? Which is as much as saying, to make new institutions which are needed. I think if you turn to the work of counsel in the office, you will find unlimited, unbelievable output of that rare ore. The books are full of its traces. Most of our present law can be shown to be its product. Granted that the lawyer may not be the first actor in events, granted that he brings forth few novel needs to serve, he is none the less a precious social engineer. He observes the need that has risen. He finds a way to meet it. It seems to have been the businessman, and not the lawyer who, in the first instance, brought about bills of exchange and bills of lading. It was, however, the lawyer who devised the mortgage, who made possible the giving of security in goods or land, while leaving the beneficial use of the borrower during the period for which the security was needed. Made possible, therefore, the secured production loan whereby a debtor had the chance of financing a new venture out of whose own profits he might hope to meet the debt. The land of a farmer wishes him back again. It was the lawyer who, despite the other lawyer, built up the concept of the equity of redemption. It was the lawyer who turned the note of hand of commerce into the banker's ironclad collateral note. The lawyer who out of the same stock and the ancient covenant produced the bond that forms the base of the investment market. He did not act alone, as I have said. His was perhaps not the first drive. His was not always the full perception of the need. But his the skill, his was the engineering. It was the lawyer who devised the long-term lease for real estate improvement, and the collateral trust for real estate financing, or for financing new equipment for a mortgaged railroad, and greatest perhaps of any single line of growth within our law. It was the lawyer who from the outset has shaped the thousand uses of the law of trusts, who made party politics a possibility, when to lose an election meant the penalties of treason, who built up the possibilities of the permanent charitable gift, who turned the trust to keep family land together in the teeth of rules, who first opened to married women an independent income, who maneuvered by way of trust the first great consolidations, and turned that concept to the new fields of importing and motorcar finance. This last step, that of the trust receipt, I find peculiarly illuminating, perhaps because I know its course in more detail. You can see its growth, follow its invention, its steady step-wise spread. First in financing grain from upper New York to the sea. The early litigation that went unnoticed. The crucial case that caught the eye of Metropolitan Council. The introduction of the device, now modified, elaborated, into the importing business. The major firms that participated in its development, and the development itself, case by case, in litigation, clause by clause, in the increasing adequacy of the drafting. And in the course of the past 10 years, we can trace out its spread and readaptation to the financing of automobiles. Again, we know the men, the means, the problems. In this one history, we can see something of the energy, thought, and originality that must go into creation of even such a single, simple tool as this. And this history, we may be certain, is but typical of a course of building as steady, as irresistible, as craftsmanlike, in some ways as beautiful, as that which through the medieval centuries raised cathedrals. Nor are inventions of the lawyers limited to office counsel. Growth in law, especially growth in case law, has been attributed too lightly in most legal writing to the courts. I would neither deny nor belittle the part that the courts play in the growth. But how many judges do you know of whom it can be said, as it was once of Holmes? The trouble with that fellow is that he is always deciding cases on points that were not raised in the briefs of either side. How many judges do you know whose analysis of the case and of the situation is a major fresh creation, a let there be light, rather than that lesser type of building which consists in merely modifying the theory of one advocate or of the other? The job of choosing wisely between the inventions of counsel is a difficult one. The job of consistent wise choice is tremendous. Yet it is not of itself the major work. That has been done consistently, continuously by the bar. Webster, not Marshall, made the Dartmouth College case. And when I say invention, I mean invention. To produce out of raw facts a theory of a case is prophecy. To produce it persuasively, and to get it over, is prophecy fulfilled. Singers of songs and dreamers of plays, though they be lawyers, build a house no wind blows over. I say then, that both in the office and in court, it is the profession that keeps the law alive. It is the profession that keeps the law from sitting too closely straight-jacketed upon the social body. I have already indicated why the lawyer gets, why he will continue to get, the least of credit for his work. But the fact that he has it to do puts upon him a responsibility that reaches beyond his clients, beyond his surroundings, that reaches to the future of the people. A responsibility to his kind which there is no escaping, that laymen do not know he carries it, and do not care, makes it no more escapable. His, and his only, is the choice. He can either set himself across the path of progress, he can either check and block, by the exercise of utmost ingenuity, each new forward step, or he can do the opposite. Meantime, however, he must survive. It irks me to intrude such thoughts upon a high discussion, but he must pay the rent. Ours is a money economy. The man must have an income. Income and standing up under responsibility. It is a troublous team to ride. Thus we come to that peculiar engine built up by the profession for the purpose of helping a lawyer ride the team, that system of practices and norms we know as legal ethics. There are two of those norms which look with incisive directness to our problem. The one is the established view, respectable as few other things are respectable, accepted as such not only by the profession, but the public, that a lawyer should believe in his cause. If he believes in his cause, he will fight. He will fight more vigorously. He will think more skillfully. His whole self will be unchained by his conviction. That way lies, among other things, success. And as the lawyer becomes the symbol for his cause, and gains weight before the jury when he stakes his reputation on his case, so also the finer type of lawyer has through the centuries worked himself up into full belief in his cause before his work took on full value to himself. So much so that the lay folk speak of an advocate's temperament as of a type, and smile or jibe to watch the speed with which most lawyers can achieve conviction. Believing in one's causes involves, however, comes inevitably and almost imperceptibly to involve believing in one's client, when one's client brings a considerable succession of cases. The same loyalty which the finer ethic calls toward the cause is bound to develop in the course of time toward the client as well. But in this day of group activity, of corporate practice, the client with the succession of cases is the goal of all delight. He or it, his or its retainer, if I may be again sordid for a moment, pays the rent. This comes inevitably to mean the substantial identification of a lawyer with a particular client or particular interest. He is a banking lawyer, or a railroad lawyer, or a sugar company lawyer. In such capacity, and with such loyalties, he should of course turn down the cases in which he does not believe. Those, you may notice, will be cases against the banking house, the sugar company, the railroad. Thus, naturally and easily, one works out a harmonization between one's duty to the public and one's duty to one's pocket. And I wish to make here particularly the point that the ethic of believing in one's case is of peculiar value when one discovers that the case of a poor man is not worthy of such belief. but there may be a pleasant paunch upon your client. His wallet may look fat. Suppose now that his case does not at first blush seem appealing. Then what to do? Courage, my friend. There is another ethic. There is that admirable ethic of the profession, which makes it clear that the lawyer is neither judge nor jury. That the lawyer has neither duty nor right to usurp the constitutional function of the judicial tribunal. It is not for him to condemn a man who has not been found guilty by 12 jurymen. It is not for him to condemn a practice which has not been found unwarranted by the court. It is of the essence of justice that every man be given a fair hearing, be given vigorous representation at the hearing. In a word, that he be assured a fair trial of his case. That he be not condemned until that trial is had, until the court has spoken. No ethic is more respectable among ourselves. The public does not always understand it. But reasons of the gravest import and most far-reaching effect are, and should be urged in its support. To insist upon the identification of lawyer and client is in practice to jeopardize the representation of any unpopular cause, of any unpopular litigant. It is in essence to deny a trial. Shame to those members of the profession who, knowing this, have yet so often shrunk from unpopular causes, have even joined in the pressure against counsel in such causes. If popularity were always rightness, either short range or long, there would be no grave danger in thus lumping counsel and client. But the contrary proves true. And here is also a situation continually met with, in which the lawyer himself finds it impossible to accurately judge the facts. Only either at trial, or long after it, does the true set of facts appear, which contradicts what he himself has believed to hold against his client. Here again a client is entitled to the benefit of the fair trial. He should have it. The bar exists to ensure it. Yet you will tell me these two ethics contradict each other, that one cannot at the same time believe wholly in his cause, and yet secure fair hearing for a cause he does not believe in. Do not be so naive. Already you are almost lawyers. 3 years you have been studying the law. Are you still unaware that every doubtful point is regularly answered both ways by authority? Are you still blind to the fact that rules do not control decision when the case is troublesome? In every field, on every point, when there is doubt, the law will offer you technique and rules, respected, to work to either goal. There is the Janus face of precedent. The same with logic. You can if you will reject the rule because you do not see its end. We cannot take this step. We do not see where to draw the line. Or, the rule here contended for would lead to this, and this, which we cannot accept. Therefore we must reject it in the present case as well. Or, on the other hand, if you prefer, you can decide the case regardless of such far imagined difficulties. It has been urged upon us that the rule proposed would lead to this, and this. Such cases are not now before us. It will be time to test them when they come. The present case, in any event, is within the line. Within the law, I say, therefore, rules guide, but they do not control decision. There is no precedent the judge may not at his need either file down to razor thinness or expand into a bludgeon. Why should you expect the ethics of the game to be different from the game itself? Of course, from one angle, the two guides are inconsistent. But each, for itself, is true, is sound, is vital in its place. When to use which? A search for outside answer is an empty quest. Empty, delusive, footless repose, says Holmes, is not the destiny of man. Choice is your own, your answer for your choice. There are no rules to shoulder your responsibility. Yet there are rules which can be made to seem to shoulder it. For see, I have set before you two norms of legal ethics, both of which, as I understand it, are completely respectable, accepted, impeccable, and either of which is always available. All that is needed to assure you of success once you acquire any clients is for you to choose the convenient ethic at the convenient time. You have only to insist upon the need for a fair hearing when a fat client's case looks bad, and to insist upon the need for believing in your case, either when you do by good fortune believe in a fat client's case, or when you find it difficult to believe some starved, pinched fellow. Whatever you do then, you will have done respectably. Men will look up to you. You will sleep at night. Your conscience will be clear. Your income tax will grow. For your totem, for your ideal. You then can take the squid, the cuttlefish. Spine he has not, but oh, a beak he has. The spine is absent, but the beak is strong. There are 10 counted legs, each leg alive with suckers, all waving through the water after prey. The world, the whole world, offers hope for prey. When pressed sometime too hard by enemies, most lawyer like he hides himself behind a cloud of ink. Why does a hearse horse snicker? I may seem to you to have been somewhat lightly ironic, somewhat idly cynical, in what I have just said. I may seem to be mocking at the precious things of life. I should be sorry to have you mistake me. I speak in bitter seriousness. I speak in behalf of all ideals I know. I speak without expectation, but I speak in hope. The unpopularity of our profession, the accusations against it, must not and cannot be permitted to hide its finer service from our eyes. We and no others carry the burden of making the law worth having over the long run, and from day to day. I see so clearly the responsibility, but I see also so very clearly the ease with which it can be shunted, and shunted even in all ignorance of the shunting. I see so clearly this two-edged ethic. I see the balm and smugness with which it baits invertebrates among us. The pressure to let the burden slide will fall so soon on you. As things stand, it is a pressure well nigh irresistible. There will be very few whose eyes it does not close. There will be very few of you who will resist it. But 20 years from now, it will give pleasure. It will give foolish pride. It will give honor to meet those few and take them by the hand, they that come after. Spring and the rising sap. New growth and spring. Fresh green shoots from the earth, fresh shoots from hardening youngsters. Spring and the storm. Some high old king will fall. Room, room, room. Some overshadowing head will crash to earth. Surge, sap, rise high, and smother the saplings to follow. Spring and the rising blood. New growth and spring. Strong young calves from the herd, fresh growth on hardening horn. Mating call of the spring. Some ancient bull goes down. Room, room, room. Some monarch of the herd is gored to earth. Surge, blood, rise high, and gore down the rivals to follow. Spring and the rising youth. New growth and spring. Spring and our men to wait for the old to fall before youth rises. Are men trees of the soil to steal the life from the young till the high king crashes? Beasts of the field to harem the herd till the monarch falls. Rise high.
Surge, rise high. Surge from the loins of the elders. Surge with the counsel and strength of them that have builded before you. Builded before you I, and misbuilded before you. Surge from the loins of the elders, beside them, beyond them.
Beside them, beyond them. Beside them, beyond them. Room, oh, for the bone of our bone that shall rise to replace us. Room, room, room. It shall rise to replace us. Oh, for the brain of our brain that shall bring our doing to naught.